Well, it's 3:02, so we're just going to jump in so we don't waste any time. First, Jeremy, let me officially thank you for carving out some space to hang out with us for a few minutes. Um, we, as a church planting and discipleship organization ministry, have been paying attention to what you guys are doing down there in Tampa, have been reading about it. And as I said, we've been down a couple of times and really think God is doing some good work through you guys. And so we had the pleasure of having Brian on here about 6 weeks ago. And but you know what? We really like to get the nuts and bolts. And my instinct tells me you're kind of an inside guy. So I wanted to kind of hear it from another perspective.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
think
I'm the
everybody
crazy
kind of
nutter. Yeah.
that's kind of the impression that I've gotten is you're the guy that's making it happen. So, um,
Mhm.
you've taken on a new role, I think, since my first exposure to you guys. Is that right? Or am
Uh,
I just did I
Several
not
roles, man. We
connect?
just we just find words to describe our experiences. So you're riding the roller coaster, whatever God has for us, and you're saying, is there a title that kind of intersects with what's currently happening? Yeah. So that's changed a few times. From I was just a volunteer kind of person, but founder of the Underground. So I was bivocational, and then moved to associate director, director of training, translocal director in planting, you know, uh, so all kinds of stuff.
Well, so that's a good place for us to start. Take us through a little bit of your own personal spiritual history. Like, where'd you grow up? What'd you do as a young guy? Kind of how did you
Mhm.
get to where you are today?
Yeah, I had a very interesting kind of experience growing up. I did grow up Missouri Synod Lutheran. Any Lutherans in the house? I don't know.
You,
Who knows?
no.
Probably not. But Missouri Synod, so like Latin in the service, very kind of conservative on those ends, robes, procession of the cross. That was like a childhood experience, but there was like no connection with Jesus. And it wasn't until college, 19 years old, kind of came to that existential crisis. It's either basically I had a gun and I was like, either I'm going to commit suicide tonight or I'm going to give my life to Jesus. I'm a bit of an extreme person. So I just thought that was an obvious choice. And so I decided to like say, God, I lose my life for you and your kingdom tonight. Um, and it gave my father this gun that he didn't know I had. And I said, you probably should hold this for me. And that was the beginning of my spiritual journey. It was I never seen an altar call. And yet I prayed, years later, people were like, oh, there's this thing called the sinner's prayer. I was like, I never prayed that. I don't know what. And then people were like, well, it sounds like this. I was like, oh, yeah, in my bedroom. Yeah, that totally happened. You know, um, so it wasn't evangelical. Got involved with InterVarsity Christian Fellowship. That was the first time I read the Bible for myself. Evangelism. I mean, some of those concepts were like completely foreign. I mean, that the worship music, the whole experience. So I find myself, even today, I still feel like among some evangelical circles, I feel very out of place, very like, oh, this is like, it's always felt like crossing cultures for me, Christian wise. Um, but I'm kind of been influenced by InterVarsity in the sense that, you know, Pentecostals and Methodists and, you know, conservatives and like they're all kind of there reading the scriptures together in that college age. And so there's just this appreciation for the body of Christ and being able to just see like the beauty in the the Catholic teachings and saints and the Lutherans, but also Assemblies of God. It just interdenominational is like the InterVarsity thing for us, and so kind of feel like a chameleon in that way. But college years are super formative. That's where I said, let's move to the city. That's really where the underground started, was in 96, 97. We didn't call it the underground. It was just us, a group of us saying, let's live the New Testament, all of it, not just on the college campus, but in the city, among the poor, in community, living together, sharing resources, almost like a modern monastic thing. And that was us. I was living with Brian, and he was the InterVarsity staff worker. And I mean, the rest is history. But that was just us trying to say, man, we just want to be the New Testament together, and that's all we really cared about, you know, for many years.
And you're from Florida originally?
Yeah, I'm one of the few Tampanians. So you met two Tampanians now, both born and raised in Tampa. We're born at the same hospital, but 5 years apart, almost to the day.
Wow, fantastic. So share with us a little bit, kind of give us your version of the Tampa Underground history. Like, how did it get started? Who were the key players? What were the conversations you guys were having early on? Take us through some of that.
Yeah. So early on, like I said, the InterVarsity, it is just organic work of a handful of just young believers saying, we want to be the New Testament. Let's live together. Boundaries didn't mean much to us. We just said, no boundaries. The kingdom's the kingdom. You know, that's the only boundary that matters to us. So life, you know, organizational, like what's InterVarsity, what's not InterVarsity, that didn't matter to us. It was like, we're running this tutoring program, you know, in the inner city. We're living in this city. We're trying to like care for our homeless friends, you know. We're trying to do racial reconciliation across cultures. We're trying to go overseas. And what was InterVarsity? It was very organic and messy. I mean, it's hard to like tell like what came first, chicken or egg. It was just us kind of trying to obey God, essentially. That organic form. Really, that was like 5 years of us going to church on Sundays, these things called church on Sundays, these sing-along times that we have, and being frustrated, like coming back and just being so frustrated. Like, and that's when the prosperity gospel was like, I was running rampant through Tampa. Like, I mean, it was, everybody was prosperity heretic in Tampa, it seemed like, even prosperity light, you know, it was like, there was the hardcore prosperity folks, and then there was prosperity light, but everybody was infected with this heresy. And we just thought it was offensive to the poor, offensive to the scriptures, to the cross. And we were just so frustrated by this, you know? And to be honest, it was a little bit of bitterness. It was just like, you know, growing to hatred, like hating the bride in a way. And we had to come to the point where Floyd McClung, who he's kind of a renowned missionary, kind of helped start YWAM and has done stuff all over the world. He's an older gentleman now and not doing well health-wise, but he's one of our first mentors. And we just sat down at a restaurant, Brian and I, with him, and we just said, man, you get up and you preach, but you never say what's wrong with the church. There's 1,000 things wrong with the church, but you never say what's wrong. And he goes, I don't have to. He's like, that's easy. I try to inspire the bride to be what she should be, what she can be, what she is in the heart and mind of God. And instantly it was like both of us were convicted, just like, you gotta stop being a-holes, you know, like, and I don't think we've done a very good job stopping that part of our personalities, but there was this conviction of like, it is the bride. It's the bride of Christ. So why are we trying to tear this bride down? You know, we got to like figure that out. And so there was a period of time where we started doing every Saturday night. This is very formative for us. We had a group of people that we were making disciples through InterVarsity and the city. So we had a growing group of people that were like, we had taught them the New Testament and hermeneutics, and they were reading it for themselves. And then they're having these experiences that are almost completely disassociated from the scripture, you know. Every once in a while it was. And so you knew there was something good there, but we didn't have the language. We're like, wow, how do we make sense of this? But we started a prayer time for the church in Tampa, not the underground, not our thing, but for the bride of Christ. And so we were influenced by International House of Prayer. They were just getting started at a similar time. And we said every Saturday night from 11 p.m. to 1 a.m., we're going to intercede. We're going to worship and intercede for the churches in Tampa. We're going to pray the scriptures. And so that was our guide. We had kind of like a little bit of a harp and bowl, if you're familiar with them, kind of method, you know. And so we read the scripture. We had prayer leaders, very similar to that environment. And for 2 hours, because we knew all these people were going to gather in the name of Jesus and to be the church. And we just thought, man, we should just pray for the bride. We should fall in love with her. We want the kingdom, and we don't care if it comes through us. I think that was a very important prayer for us. That we started praying prayers like, God, we ask for your kingdom to come through the heretics in our city. God, may your kingdom come. If you want to use us, if you want to allow the kingdom to come through us, yes, that would be a privilege. But you don't have to, God. We're just happy if it comes, you know? And that's still like very close to the heart of core underground people. It's very, very close. Like when you say that among underground people, they just go, yeah, you know, like the underground is our best attempt to be the bride. But we also are sober enough to go, the underground is not the bride fully. It is and is not yet type of thing. It's our best attempt. And so that was really brought a lot of sobriety that period of time. The second big milestone is the Revelation Bible Study, where we had a group of 50 people. We said, you know, we're going to do something. It's going to be independent. We were trying to do Reformation for a while within a church. And it was like what we were doing, we just kind of needed more lanes to run in and make mistakes. And to be honest, that existing traditional structure couldn't afford us to make those mistakes. But if we were independent, maybe we could make those mistakes. And so we knew we were going to start something, but we didn't know what. And we wanted to be Christocentric. We try to be relentlessly Christocentric, image of the invisible God. Like, okay, how do we know God through the Spirit? And so we thought, oh, Revelation, the apocalypse of Jesus Christ. Let's actually not read this as the end of the world, but read this as a revelation of Jesus. And then therefore, what does it teach us about being his body? So that's how we read it, chapter by chapter. I think it was every other week. I'm a little fuzzy on the frequency. I think it was every other week we did it. And so we would study the scripture, have a discussion as a group of 50. Brian was the main facilitator. And then we would then have a discussion as a group. We'd break into small groups. What does this mean for us in our day, in our time? What does this mean about being the bride? And then what does it mean for the bride today in Tampa? And this is where we would have these like debates and conversations. But it was like 9 months we were doing that. And we had no conclusions. That's the thing. We're talking years now. This group of people we're simultaneously living and experiencing the missional heart of God. We really were being the church, but we had no language for it. We had no ecclesial minimum. We read Wolfgang Simpson. We're trying to be house churches, but we're like, house churches are just, it's not broad enough. We need expansive ecclesiology, but we don't really know what that means. And I think one of the accidentally wisest things we ever did, we didn't quickly land on any answers. We just took our time. We just said, man, we are practitioners who are trying to figure it out. And it's okay if it takes longer than 2 months, 3 months, 2 years of just like, yeah, let's pray. Okay, let's do a Bible study. At the end of that Revelation Bible study, we commissioned 9 adults and 10 kids to go to the Philippines to be mentored by non-white, non-Western church planters who planted churches among the poor. And it was in that context that we solidified the bones, the blueprint of the underground. So we took all that data, all that heart, all that conversation, and we said, in this context, every Monday night, let's try to like make something, you know. And that's where we came up with the manifesto. That's where the org chart, you know, some of our most innovative things that are just, you know, in some ways ahead of their time. And it came out of that context. It came out of a sweaty room in the Philippines, you know, with butt sweat and arguments and conflict and just trying to figure it out. But make something. And we created like this little manual, and it's garbage. No one has it anymore. I mean, some of the documents we still have, but for the most part, the manual's gone. And we invited the 50 to come to the Philippines so they could experience some of what we experienced. And then we hand them this manual. In the Philippines, the volcano just erupted at Tagaytay, so at Taal. So we were at the Holiday Inn at Taal, and we actually went on the volcano and spit over the edge because we thought that would be funny. and it was the only, I think 32 came. So that's pretty good out of 50. 32 came to the other side of the world. And we presented this to them. I said, is this our heart? Does this, the words, does the infrastructure, does the org chart, is this our heart? And of course, they were all like, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for years now. And then we basically said, do we want to do this together? And then that's, to us, that's like the culmination, everything just solidified in that moment. Say, yes, we want to be this together, and that's the underground. And from then, we've just been fleshing out that blueprint for 20 years or 15 years now.
So what was it about being in the Philippines that made that possible? Why was it necessary to be in the Philippines? Why couldn't you have done that here?
You're blind to what you're blind to. Outside the context, you become a little bit more open. So I say the Filipino culture in general is the antidote to whatever ails the American soul. So we're radical individualists. They are not. But they don't ignore the individual, but they're just not radical about it. They're much more communal. Sharing is a default to them. Where sharing for us is usually transactional or conditional. So, for instance, how does this play in ministry life? This one organization we went to, their executive director they had an exec team, and they chose an executive director every year. And we thought, okay, that's cool. So you voted an executive director. Well, who's been an executive director in the past? Well, this guy. Wait, this guy. Actually, all of us have been executive director at some point. What? Yeah, no, we share the responsibility. We share the load. And so they would just pass the baton in true shared leadership. And that person would be the leader, and people would submit to their executive leadership. They would be a communal council to help and support that person, but they would pass the baton. You're the executive director. You have to make the call, and then they would step down and somebody else would do it. That blew our minds as Americans. We're like, if you change leadership, the leader typically has to go. Like, there's no you don't stay on the exec team. if you basically just got rid of your executive director, and for years they've been doing this. Another thing is they would plant churches in the slums of Metro Manila, and this has super influenced us. A lot of people don't know this. So this group of missionaries, they specialized in planting churches in the slums of Metro Manila. They would go to a traditional church and say, would you like to plant a church in the slums of Metro Manila? If you do, we can make a contract with you. We will give you a team of pastors, missionaries. They will teach you how to do medical cooperatives, preschools, basic social mapping, essentially. They'll basically teach you how to do development work, Christian evangelical development work in this slum community for 2 years. We'll give you a team for free. And at the end of 2 years, we will pull that team out. Your leader, whoever you designate, your team will be the heroes. It'll be named your name, and they'll never know we existed as an organization. So for us as the underground, what do we tell microchurches? We say, microchurch, you're called by God to be the church. How can we help you? If you're a part of our network, guess what? You now have a media department, a finance department, you have facilities, you have all these resources, you have coaching, you have training, you have all this stuff at your disposal. They never have to know about the underground. You don't have to ever introduce any of your people to the underground. We're organizationally shy. That shyness is, I'm telling you, explicitly Filipino. We saw the instant wisdom of it. I said, man, you just give your expertise away so that other people can be the heroes, so other people can do what God is calling them to do and plant where God is calling them to plant. Yes, that's what we do. Blew our minds. We just said, man, we got to repent. We got to be more Asian about this, And so that's deep, deep, deep in the underground infrastructure. Of course, no one really knows that, but if you pull back the infrastructure, about 40% is Asian. And the Asians typically pick up on it. They're like, y'all some weird Americans, you know? But yeah, once you start pulling it back, you start like, yeah.
Talk a little bit about the 18 values that you guys really put front and center everywhere in the building, on the website.
Yeah. It's a giant back tattoo. Yeah.
I'm sure somebody does.
Yeah.
Talk a little bit about where they came from, what makes them a little unique, etc.
Yeah. So those 18 values, a lot of that came from the prayerful data in the Revelation Bible study. It was like we were always sharing, and this is our heart, this is our heart. But it also seemed kind of complex. It was like, man, we're kind of asking for a lot because the church is, it's not simple. It's not like, oh, these 3 words that rhyme or have the same letter, start with the same letter. It's not marketing. It's the New Testament. It's like the heart of God. So we kept on going, man, it just seems like the church should value this. And we would like take that as like a little data point. Okay, but the church should also value this. And so we kind of had that data going into the Philippines. And we knew there had to be a way to rally around values versus a vision, because vision forces you to align. Unless you have a vision big enough that contains 1,000 visions, which is what we try to do. Our vision is like, actually, you should hear from God and we should help you, which contains 1,000 visions. But how do you actually know that you're a thing if everybody's doing different ministries, different microchurches all over the city? If you're truly decentralized, how do you know that you're a we or an us? And so it was like, what's the rallying cry then? We said, man, what if it feels like we should organize around value sets, not methodologies or missions or a vision. It's a value set that actually binds us together in unity. And then it was like, how do you word it? It's about words. And Brian is the primary architect of words. He's very good at it. I might be considered the most valuable or most improved player. He said that numerous. I think that's a public statement. So, I'm the bubbling idiot that learned how to talk along the way. And so he was really felt the burden to bring it together. He was inspired by the Lausanne Covenant, which is an evangelical faith kind of statement document of like, man, there's got to be some way to put this into words where you just read it and you go, yes. And if you don't say yes, then you're not really one of us, so he was feeling that burden really heavy. In the Philippines, our mentors on a regular basis did prayer retreats, very Catholic, contemplative, kind of spiritual retreats. And we went up to some kind of mountain, some retreat center. I don't know. I couldn't find it if you asked me to. I was just along for the ride. After lunch, I took a nap, a prayerful nap. And I woke up and Brian's like, I think I did it. I think in prayer, I just wrote a bunch of stuff down. It just came out. And I think it's pretty close. And so the team then got together and just over the next few weeks, kind of worked out some of the kinks and typos, things like that. Found all the scriptural references that really resonated with our hearts. And then we sent it back to Tampa people for like, hey, we're thinking something like this. That's how it kind of evolved. But really, the beginning moment was Brian feeling a lot of pressure and asking God, we need something like this. And I just don't want it to be what I think is cute, And it was at that prayer retreat. He just was like, put it all down. And then it probably took us another 4 weeks to really tighten it up a little bit. But yeah, and it's the same manifesto we had. Well, we didn't have the Bible in there as a value because it was like, duh, why would that not be a value? But very quickly we realized, oh, you got to say that junk out loud because otherwise people are crazy. So yeah, we put that value in there pretty quick.
Hey, for everybody that's on here, go ahead and open up your chat window. And if you've got a question for Jeremy, just put it up there and I'll call on you here in a minute. So Jeremy, at this point, as you look back at the beginnings of Tampa Underground, yeah, what do you know now that, man, you just go back and you wish, oh, I wish I'd known that back then. I wish I'd been able
Yeah.
to see that back then.
Yeah. Yeah. I think for me, um, we're talking about the Philippines. That phrase for me, that's actually very Filipino, by the way. So even today, like for me, uh, I wish we had the language to articulate the tension between missional creativity and relational commitment. So if you think about a graph, a 2x2, missional creativity and relational engagement. And the more creative you are, the more you bias towards less relationship. You can't be as tight. You're not as similar. You're racially diverse. You're culturally diverse. You're economically diverse. You go into different parts of the city. Your methodology is different. So as creativity increases, it pulls against trust. It pulls against relationship. And of course, if you really go high relationship, well, what happens is you have to lower creativity, and then you become much more clone-like. And so this dynamic is huge in a decentralized network. So these are just natural forces in the world. So, we have suffered greatly because, man, you're trying to help people go for it and hear from God and be creative and high permission, but they need relationship too. You need both of these things. And so how do you get it? How do you lead people into relationship, but still allow for creativity and mission? And to be honest, man, I mean, it's taken a long time to learn, just the language to describe it. So that way we go to missionaries and say, hey, this is some of the tensions you might be feeling. And they go, oh my gosh, just knowing those exist is helpful. So, oh yeah, wish we would have known that 9 years ago, that would have been great. I think that's something, I mean, if we could have known that 13, 15 years ago and be able to like actually explain it and make sense of it for the missionaries world, for the microchurches world, that would have been pretty helpful, I think. Yeah.
Which of those axes do you find most people drawn to, or is there no? Do most of them lean into the creativity and struggle on the relationship side, or do they lean into the relationship and struggle on the creativity side?
I think, yeah, that's a good question. My initial answer would be there's probably a pest intersecting some Myers-Briggs stuff there. I don't know. Yeah. So the apostles, you can't stop them. And it's like, I'm doing my thing. Screw y'all. I mean, hopefully they don't, hopefully they're nice about it, but they're, yeah, catch up, And then there's other folks that's like, I don't, it's just us doing our thing and it's just relational and they just don't, it's hard for them to make waves or push the edge. And so that you see them like really lock in relationally very well, but they're also not as innovative, which again, in the underground ecosystem, it's good because if all of those people can be rub elbows together, you have like really creative apostolic people going, man, I'm innovating this, I'm doing this. I'm wearing my well-built shirt right now, well-built bike shirt. That's a total innovation of kind of missional work and working with the homeless. It's wonderful. But John Dingler's just like, I'm going over here, deal with it, and you're like, okay. And then of course, when he's in relationship with somebody who's much more sensitive, emotional, maybe kind, it helps him. It makes him a better leader. It makes him slow down and say, oh, I have to care for people along the way too. The purpose. Okay, right. I forgot. So it becomes really vital that the diversity of the network actually is in relationship with each other. But again, people are biasing towards different, different points. But if you could get them, if you get them together, rub elbows. I don't want to say they have to attend something every week together. That's not what I mean. But they do need to convene. They do need to know each other. So that becomes like a secondary problem. So first of all, how do you give permission and release the priesthood of believers? But then how do you convene them so they know each other, so they can persevere the mission? So these are the two major contributions of the centralized components of the underground, is permission and perseverance. And of course, how you do that could kill creativity or relationship, or augment those things and help them. Yeah.
Good. Hey, Ryan, jump in here.
So I was looking at your website and noticing different undergrounds that have formed in the U.S. and around the world. But it looks like that it appears that they structure things a little differently in each context.
Yes.
So I'm just curious how you've seen that play out in different contexts. Do they look very different from each other? Is that a good thing? That kind of stuff.
Oh, it's always a good thing. No, we're very anti-cookie cutter, like borderline anti-cookie cutter. I mean, there may be an exception somewhere, but the hardest part about things called underground in other cities is that they're called underground. And so I think we only have two. I forget. Maybe there's three out there. I forget. But we're saying no more to that. No one else can take the name because they need to feel free to be different. They have to be different for their context. And we really, really highly encourage that. We want them to discern so one of the biggest differences is for us in our adventure, it was a lot of homegrown disciples. The initial 50 were all homegrown. Most of the staff team that's on the staff right now, 70% of them are my great, I forget how many greats, but it's several grandchildren in the Lord. You know what I'm saying? They're direct descendants. I'm not even sure they know that, to be honest, right? But they are. I was like, man, so there's a lot of internal discipleship, right? But in St. Louis, there's some folks there, Bentonville, in Portland. They don't have as much internal discipleship. They're meeting all these potential missional Christians in their city already that are already kind of ready to do something. So it doesn't have to have the same story, which means they're solving different types of problems than we had to solve initially. And they're having to structure it slightly different. In Portland, if you go to a thing called a church, you're actually a real Christian. In Tampa, you're probably still not a Christian if you attend a church service. Birmingham is like that. I mean, almost everybody attends a church service. Almost no one's a Christian. It's crazy, So I don't know how to tell the difference. I just know it's like, there's no way that 98% of this population is a Christian. This is not true. But in Portland, it's like, man, they're all a part of like other faith communities, faith families. So the way they're empowering microchurches, how they're relating to microchurches and developing a decentralized network, it is not as internal as we have, right? So that's a pretty big difference. How they articulate that, how they talk about it, what's their front door, that type of thing. But for us, that's not a problem at all, because we think it's awesome. That guy has to reach Portland, not Tampa, And so we just cheerlead him on and, help him as we can. But at the end of the day, I'm like, man, I don't know what to do. Sometimes he would, especially when Sean is his name, when Sean first started calling, he was like, well, I mean, can I do this or whatever? Or should I do this? Or should I was like, bro, you were asking the wrong people if you want me to tell you what to do. I mean, I have strong opinions, but I don't live in Portland. I have no idea what you're talking about, really. I can pretend like I do, but I don't really know. that's been some of the relationship, just trying to help as much as we can, inspire as much as we can, coach as much as we can, but at the same time, really push people to discern for their context.
Hey, Lance, how about you? Go ahead and ask your question.
Thanks, Todd. Thanks, Jeremy, for giving up your time and jumping on here with us.
Oh yeah, man.
Super honored. So I'm the new guy at a church here north of Dallas, discipleship guy. And they have a Barnabas Outreach Center that's been going pretty strong the last 2 or 3 years. Very much a high transaction, right? Just clothes and food. But we've recently been gifted a church building, and it's right down the street from the Boys and Girls Club. Amazing, amazing opportunity. How would you guide the conversation with that opportunity? I mean, I know my natural intuitions, but I'd be just curious to hear from your perspective of what you would do and how you would guide that.
So with the building or with the program?
Well, with the program, moving it from transactional to relational and moving more in the discipleship vein, because right now they're doing great work in the community, but there's the missing mark of there's not discipleship happening, right?
Yeah.
We're just giving stuff away, but very low relational.
Yeah, it's charity, which is the lowest
right
kind of form of biblical justice.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, I guess the first question I would ask is, what is your actual assignment with that program?
Yeah.
Because if your assignment from God is to give away clothes, then you should give away clothes. You shouldn't change it.
Right.
If there's a different assignment from the Lord, trying to figure out how to articulate that. What is he really asking you to do and be? And it's possible that he's asking you to do and be several things. He is asking you to give away clothes, but he's also asking you, and so it's actually two things he's asking you. And there's some people that need to be called into this more relational type thing.
Right.
And then other people are genuinely called to do this very charity form of love, right? But I would really push people like, what do you think God wants you to do? Like John 10, what is the shepherd asking you to do? And if it's this, then let's do this. You should do this, but if there's something else, then let's try to figure that out. And it's possible that they go, yeah, no, this is fine, but we don't feel like this is our assignment. You say, oh, well, now let's discern what the assignment is. Man, it just feels like we can move it in this direction, or the charity thing's the front door, but it feels like there should be more, type of thing. And then that's the direction I would take it, because then it's based on Jesus versus strategy, or Jesus versus your vision that you're trying to recruit people into or something. You're just like, man, what do we actually think God wants this to be? The secondary thing is you'll have to match that up with teaching. So like toxic charity, biblical justice work, those type of things where it's like, okay, there's dynamics at play here. Bryant Myers, Walking with the Poor, wonderful. Love that book. I mean, for us, that's like, that's, if we could just memorize at least the first like 3 to 4 chapters, it's just like, that's it. And we want to be able to like articulate that to young disciples so that they are formed in such a way to where they can discern even more, anyways, I don't know if that's helpful.
No, thank you. Yeah.
Oh, that's really good. In fact, right over my shoulder right here is Brian Meyer's book.
Yeah, so good.
Yeah, it's a fantastic book.
Yeah.
Roy, are you where you can ask a question?
It's on the toilet.
Maybe not. All right, so let me ask this question.
Mm-hmm.
As you look back over the 15, give or take, years of the Underground, what have been some of the more difficult points of decision where there was a critical conversation or critical decision that needed to be made that you guys had to kind of grapple with? What have been some of those critical points?
Facilities is always one we always, it's a decentralized network. It's not assumed that you need a facility. So our first facility was a house with 4 bedrooms and a living room. That was our office. Then we moved to like a 1,200 square foot place. And then we moved to a 20,000 square foot place, So first of all, to get the first space, that was like, all right, do we really want to, the question was, especially early on, are we going to get sucked into doing the same thing? Are we going to put ourselves financially in a vulnerable place where now we have to tell people you need to give money and we have to start strong arming people and all that stuff, So that was one thing. And then we got a really big building. It was like, oh my gosh. And it was financially, we always get like garbage buildings, by the way. That's how we can afford it. We just take other people's garbage, make it look prettier, and then we could roll with it. But still, it bothered us. We were like, man, it's like this. In some ways, this just looks like a crappier, not as well painted, smellier version of church buildings, because it has classrooms and it has an auditorium and it has offices. And so every step of those type of facility or iterations has really, bothered people. We've had to wrestle with that, that type of stuff. The translocal stuff, like being shy, we refused to take interviews or host people for 10 years. That was something that people were wanting to come visit. People wanted to help, but we just felt like we didn't know what we were talking about, at least not enough to actually help people. And so we just refused. We didn't want the celebrity thing. We didn't want like the limelight. We're just very cautious of all those things. We just think celebrity Christianity is just another form of heresy. It takes away, it's the opposite of John the Baptist, like we should decrease, he should increase type of thing. And so, and then we started moving into a season, like maybe we should tell the story, whether the underground is right and wrong, it does exist in the world. It has existed. And we've done something, and maybe that might help some people. But that's a big shift for us. Huge shift. Understand, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people now, all over the world. We're like interacting with hundreds of people have been in my house for barbecues, And before 10 years earlier, nobody. It was all internal. We wouldn't take the call. So that was a big decision. And I'm trying to think of anything else. Brian, getting another executive director other than Brian, so Lucas Pulley is the executive director of the Tampa network. And that's a big, can you do that? Can you have somebody else come in like the Filipinos and actually start directing things and making decisions? Is that possible? And then I think right now we're in the period where can the young bloods, the great grandchildren actually lead to the future? Or is grandpa going to get in the way and be like, I don't know, man, back in my day, we used to do it like this. And why do you think that matters? And that doesn't matter. But I built something for 20 years ago. They have to build something for the next 20. So again, how does that dynamic play out? That's our current kind of like, I don't know, how do we do that? There's a lot of examples of people not doing it well. So we're going to try to do it well. We'll try.
So what would you say to young leaders that are, again, not necessarily in Tampa, but somewhere else? Our network is across North America. Just young leaders about leadership, about decentralized ministry, about their own formation. What would you say?
Are they leaders? Are they like network leaders, or are they just microchurch leaders? Because I would delineate the two.
No, most of these are going to be launching networks of some sort.
Networks. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, first of all, I would say you have to be a radical. Like, you have to be a practitioner first. And you can never lose that. You have to try to share the gospel and get shut down. You have to try to love your neighbors and suck at it. You have to fail, you know, and then you have to, like, I don't know, talk about it. Say, yeah, man, I tried this over here, and I'm just a mediocre missionary. You know, you put me or Brian next to some of our microchurch leaders, we suck. We're like not good missionaries. I mean, we have rock stars. Rock star saints. We're like, okay, we're just like design agents, you know. But we have to share the gospel. We have to be practitioners. Everything is still birthed out of it. I would say, man, you have to be radical. Like, you have to be like weird somehow. Like, you're only doing stuff for Jesus. Like, there's some aspect of your life that the only reason, the only explanation you give somebody is, I think Jesus wants me to do this. It could be something like treasure hunts. You know, it could be IHOP. Like, yeah, I pray and worship and intercede for the church in Tampa 4 hours a day, 5 hours a day, you know? And I'm telling you, you do that for 10 years and you're a weirdo in the church world.
Mm-hmm.
And people are going to start leaning in. You'll gain gravitas from this. The second thing is, get ready to suffer.
Before you go into the second thing.
Yeah.
You lost me somewhere in there with the IHOP comment.
I'm sorry. International House of Prayer.
Oh, right.
In Kansas City. Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
I'm just thinking pancakes. So.
I know.
I
don't even think they use that anymore, but they're our friends and we love them. So, and I like pancakes too. So either way, yeah. Fostering. We got our friends in Hawaii who, they're just weird. They're fostering and adopting, and this guy's setting up a real estate agency that's basically built for Native people by Native people, Hawaiians, which is like unheard of in Hawaii. It's the only one. He's just weird. He's like leveraging his position to do something really radical in Hawaii. So you got to have something like that in your life. You got to do that, young leaders. Don't ever lose it. The amount of time you can give to it might diminish. You know, maybe you start out, you're like 30 hours a week. You're like doing it in the streets. Maybe you suck, but you're trying. And then maybe 10 years later, you're only able to really give, 5-7 hours a week. But that's how it goes. The second thing is get ready to suffer. Like suffering, in fellowship with Christ in his sufferings. If you really go to the edge of the kingdom, if you really step into those gaps, you're going to get punched in the mouth by the devil. The wolves from Ephesus are real. The wolves from among you are real. You will be betrayed by your most beloved disciples, people that you invested in, and suffering is going to harden you. It's going to be the way that you learn and mature in Christ. So it's not bad. Teresa of Avila, St. John of the Cross, I just really recommend those saints. Dark Night of the Soul, the desert, like, okay, I don't feel God, but he's here. Our theology works for this, but for some reason we don't feel God, or we don't feel as close to God, or whatever. But we have to go to the next castle, according to Teresa. So like, let's upgrade our spiritual life. Let's upgrade our spiritual walk through suffering, not to avoid suffering. In suffering, how can we meet with God, even if he's silent? So I would say get ready for that, because any network leader is going to experience suffering, and you have to, because your people will too. Your people will want to quit. And so you have to embrace that life so that you can give back comfort that you receive from God to the people that need comfort. They're going to want to quit their mission. They're going to feel like failures. They're going to feel like they should run away. And they're going to need you as a network leader to say, me too. Exactly. Now let's talk about Jesus. Let's talk about eschatology. Let's talk about the comfort in knowing the Gethsemane prayer. That's what I would suggest.
Good
Yeah.
stuff, man. Really good stuff. Kevin, ask your question.
Hey, thanks, Jeremy, for all your sharing. I really love it. I'm curious to know more about your comment about, you know, when you got your first building and then you kept moving up into bigger buildings, how you navigated the fundraising part of that without strong arming people. Like,
Yeah.
what does that look like? What does it feel like?
Yeah. Especially back in the day, it was an annual meeting with everybody who opted in and said, I consider myself underground. And so they would come, and actually it was several Sundays in a row. We would gather for a couple Sundays in a row. We call them core Sundays. And the first Sunday would just be Vision of the Underground. Just to remember again, hey, guys, this is what we do. We're not normal. We are weird. One of the most famous talks Brian ever gave was like, he just intros like, yeah, I try to explain the underground and it's hard. It's kind of like this, but not really. And it's kind of like this, but not really. And just everybody was cackling in the audience because they're just like, that's true. We don't know how to describe what we are. We're so strange. So he would do the kind of like, this is what we really are, guys, you know, and some of the stories behind that to really highlight, like, we are this decentralized network, this missional network, amazing people, but we are also a family, a thing. We do exist together, right? The second week would be just like State of the Union, you know, the budget, you know, that type of stuff. So like, here's the budget. We're super transparent. Again, coming out of the prosperity gospel where nobody was transparent. We are super transparent. Here's the salaries. Here's where the money's coming from. Here's where it's going, that type of thing. And then we would present the next year's budget and say, here's the next year's budget. Here's where the money's going. You can ask any questions that you want on any line item that you want. So it's a bit boring. I mean, we try to make it inspirational because we think our budget and the way that we use money is actually inspirational. You know, we want people to look at it and go, I can't believe you do all this with this much money. Exactly. I mean, so many people come to us and say, man, we thought you were like a $5 million organization. We're like, you were crazy. We're like a 20% of that. You know, they just assume, you know, I'm like, man, we got no money. So we would present that, and then we would make a call and say, guys, at the end of the day, generosity and giving is about worship. You know, if you're underground, we're saying this is what we think it would take to run this centralized organization that serves all these missionaries, all these stories, all these people. It takes about X number of dollars. You know, 150,000, 300,000, $500,000, $1 million, whatever it is. And then the next Sunday was like dedication Sunday, or I don't know I forget what we called it. It was just like commitment, you know. And we would make it like a thing. It was just like, you fill out a little thing, and, you know, as a part of communion, you would say, yeah, you know, and we didn't care what the amount was. We were just like, you know, and then we would add all that money up. And then if we had to slash some stuff, you know, we would just slash it. We would just be like that. The missionary community has said we could give this amount of money, you know. Okay, we'll make do with what they can give, you know, and that's what we did. I think the staff also raised money to be on staff. So every staff raises some money. The white men they have to raise a lot more because they have more access, and there's inherent biases in a lot of funding models. So I've had to carry a massive responsibility there. Brian, Lucas, all the white men, they raised a bunch of money, but everybody has to raise something. That also augments what the family, you know, can give. So we might add another, let's say $200,000 to the budget because of staff fundraising, you know, and all that together, we go, hey, can we afford this building? You know, and again, we get garbage buildings. Like, we'll get stuff that's like, you know, 20 cents a square foot, industrial space, 20 cents or 25 cents a square foot. It's just ridiculous because we just say, hey, give us this building for this amount of money, and we will never complain to you about anything. Like, So I've been on the roof of industrial buildings fixing the roof because it was either that or we could pay $5,000 a month or we'd have to pay $25,000 a month for a proper lease. Okay, I'll go upstairs now with the roof tar. I'll spend $200 on roof tar and do it myself, so.
Taylor, jump in here, man.
Yeah, thanks, Jeremy. I know part of your story at the Underground is you guys were a bunch of InterVarsity kids coming out of college, putting this thing together. How did the Underground pivot as you guys got married, you had kids, the complexity of the family unit changed from singles or young marrieds to now, being 30s and 40 somethings?
Yeah, great question. The Underground did not. So we might have to, so the Underground organization, did Brian show you the org chart, the bifurcated org chart?
I've seen it before, but he didn't show it on our call.
Yeah, so the bifurcated org chart, we basically have two aspects to the Underground ecosystem. We call it the Underground umbrella. It's like a little umbrella. And there's the organization, the 501c3, that operates as a hierarchy. There's a CEO, executive director. That's where all the programs, budgets, facilities, they all exist as a 501c3. Then there's the organic life of the church, the churches, the micro churches, right? And the power lines don't exist. There's governing elders that govern this, and there's a board that governs this. But the 501c3 exists to serve the micro churches, and the micro churches opt in to the nonprofit. So that's our basic org chart. We could get more specific on that if you want. But so to your question, Taylor, it did not change the organization at all, except, hey, our missionaries and micro churches might need some resources for some kids because these micro churches now have more kids. And so maybe we should post some stuff online or whatever, try to do something for them, which is still the core assignment of the nonprofit is what do the missionaries need? What do the microchurch leaders need to be the church they're called to be? That's what they're developing. That's how the facilities are designed. That's the filter we run through everything. Curriculums is what helps these microchurch leaders be the church they're called to be, right? The microchurches, on the other hand, have experienced, those problems of children and lots of children. And all of them have responded differently. Some of them, okay, how do you go to the strip clubs and reach women in the sex industry? You can't bring your kid there. So how are your children involved with ministry, with microchurch life, when your microchurch is basically designated and called to reach women in the sex industry, right? So now they have to respond to that question. The beauty of the microchurch model is you guys are called to be that church. So you have to be the church. You have to figure it out. So I know that some of those people have, the kids actually have been involved in intercession for the microchurch when they do the outreaches, So the kids are involved, but they're not going to the dressing rooms. You know what I'm saying? Like that's inappropriate. So, and the same thing with the husbands, because, the husbands don't get to go to the clubs. So how do the husbands participate? Other microchurches that are maybe more closer to like a house church model, some of the kids as they age, they start leading the other kids in Bible study while the adults do some kind of Bible study time, right? So they train up the kids to do the Bible study stuff that the adults are doing. They even like maybe match the same passage, so they sync up. So that's happened sometimes. And other people are just like, it's babysitting. We just get babysitters, make sure none of the kids die, and try to figure it out. So we've seen lots of different variations, but the pressure is on them. We always say, hey, we have coaches here on the nonprofit. We have a few handouts, a few resources. Sometimes we'll do a seminar, but at the end of the day, we're just here to help you. You're the one that has to figure it out as your family develops, as your microchurch develops over time. And so that's how that's happened.
Yeah, and thanks for making that distinction too. I was thinking more of the micro church side, not the underground side. But that reminded me of the unique complexity of what you guys are doing.
Yeah, the insanity. Yep.
Hey, Jeremy, it's 4:02. We've already taken the time that we had asked for. But if you'll permit me, I've got one more question for you.
Yeah, man. I'm here. I'm
I-
here with you guys.
I'd like you to share with us, like, what do you see as the growing edge of Tampa Underground? Where's your growing edge? What's God doing right now? What does the future hold?
Yeah, I think it's that next generation. I think it's that transition from the Apollo space mission to the space shuttle program, you know, and like who has the power to do that? And again, if the Apollo space mission was a big giant rocket made out of tinfoil, I don't know if y'all seen that thing. It's freaking tinfoil, and that's me. I'm going to build stuff out of duct tape and tinfoil. To be honest, you ask me, hey man, what do the missionaries need in your city? I'm gonna be like, a big rocket. That's what they need. Yeah, let's do that. So how can I still be valuable? How can I, as OG, with my experience, with my skill set, still contribute to the success of the leaders who must lead and design the space shuttle program? It's still space flight, don't get me wrong. It's still microchurches, decentralization, and empowerment, but it's not going to the moon anymore. You know, it's not for the prosperity gospel. That's not what's the current disease within the church. The current disease is cancel culture, unforgiveness in the name of Jesus, you know, the normalization of fractured, anxious environments, you know, family systems theory, all that stuff, like, you know, hurting and blame shifting and all that stuff. It's, you know, we need well differentiated leaders. We need well differentiated church. That's a different thing. We need these young bloods to be able to lead into the future, to build the space shuttle program. It's still church, it's still decentralized, and I should be involved. But how do I be involved? How do the old bloods, you know, be involved appropriately? And I love the word appropriate, because I just think strength, when appropriately leveraged, is beautiful and from the Lord. Strength inappropriately leveraged is abuse. So I feel like, man, my gifts and experience, when leveraged appropriately, is a gift. It can be something good in the world. Leveraged inappropriately for my own gain, or because my own insecurities, or I need to be the one who was a significant player in this decision or something like that. Oh, that's just not going to end well for us. So I think that's the edge of the underground. These young leaders learning how to, like, really tackle the neo-American Pharisee, you know. I don't know if you guys are seeing that, but we're seeing that all over the place. We're seeing it all over in Tampa. It's just this normalization of, like, it's just another form of Pharisee, and I think it grieves the heart of God. So this is what the missionaries are tackling. This is what they're dealing with themselves. They need to come out of it, but also that's all the disciples. I mean, that's the world around us. So they have to be equipped to do that. And a big rocket made out of tinfoil, probably not going to get us there. And so how do I position myself so that the current staff team, the young staff team, could really lead us to the future? So I don't have a lot of answers for that, because I don't, maybe I shouldn't, you know.
Maybe that's up to them to come up with the answers, right?
Yep. And fall on their face. You know, they're going to come up with some solutions that I'm going to think are dumb.
Yeah.
Be like, that's stupid. You basically are going to send a semi truck into space. That's a dumb idea, and you're going to land it. A reusable semi truck to space. That's stupid. We need a big rocket made out of tinfoil. You know that's going to happen somehow. I'm going to be displeased, and it's going to be exactly what needs to happen. So hopefully I have the integrity to be sober in those moments.
And one of the things that impressed me about the whole kind of culture of Tampa Underground is the humility you guys all speak with. I appreciate it. I appreciate the integrity.
It's been beat into us, bro.
Well, I get that. But you haven't shied away from it, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much for your time today.
Of course. Anytime, guys.